Morning, and thank you all for coming out this morning to hear me. And as I promised Miss Graham, her attendance is not what she expected, so I will come back and you'll get to hear me again. My name is Sylvia Casey, and I am a storyteller. I retired in 2007 from the information technology age, and decided that I did not want to go back into corporate America. I wanted to do something that was the exact opposite of what I did. I knew I needed to do something to supplement my retirement check, so I chose storytelling. It's something people told me I was good at. I have been doing it at my church for a number of years. I like to read. I like the old folk tales and legends and fairy tales. And so I thought that was a skill that I could use to sort of tide me over. I'm originally from Greensboro. I've lived in Charlotte over 30 years now. I am married and I have 4 children and 2 grandchildren. So I attend Simpson Gillespie Church right down on the corner, so I knew exactly where you all were. I had been here once before, thanks to Ms. Tinsley, telling stories for one of your storybook nights, and so I am just delighted to be back here with you. The dictionary defines griot as an official storyteller who is responsible for keeping the history of their village or tribe. So you will oftentimes hear a storyteller referred to as a griot. Before there was reading, writing, newspapers, telephones, court documents, social media, people had to have a way to communicate. Now, legend has it that a long time ago, 2 brothers left their village to go hunting. They only took enough food to last them 2.5 days. As they proceeded to hunt, they didn't find any game. No little animals, no big animals. First day went by, nothing. Second day went by, still nothing. The third day, they were out of food or water. But they didn't want to return to the village empty-handed, so they continued to hunt. By the 5th day, the older brother was getting weak and tired from no food and water. But still, they continued to look for another day. On the 6th day, the older brother just sort of collapsed. He was weak, he was tired, he was hungry. The younger brother said, "You sit here and rest. I'll go and see if I can find something, maybe even a tiny animal." So the younger brother went out looking. He looked all day. And as it began to get dark, he didn't find anything, not even a root that he could take back to his brother to chew on. So as he returned back to the spot where he left his brother, a thought came to him. And he stopped and he pulled aside his robe and he cut a sliver of his skin about yay long. And when he got back to where his brother was, he cooked it and he told his brother he had found a little field mice. And the brother said, "Oh, how lucky for you to have found that little mouse." And he ate that sliver of skin that he thought was a mouse. The next morning, he felt better. Just that little piece of meat revived him. So as they began to walk and look again, they saw a village in the distance, and they headed for that village, thankful that there was some sign of people. But as they walked, the younger brother started to limp, and then the blood began to show through his robes and dropped to the ground. And the older brother stopped, and he pulled back the robes, and he took off the bandage, and he saw where the skin had been cut. And he looked at his younger brother and he said, "You did that for me?" "Oh, brother, thank you. what a sacrifice you have made. Oh, brother, you don't know how thankful I am. Brother, I will tell you this. From this point forward, your good deed will be made known. My children, my children's children, my children's children's children will forever talk about the sacrifice you made for me on this hunt. And not only that, they're going to tell about all the deeds and the wonderful things your children and your children's children and their children do. And so from that point on, the oldest brother's children for generations told of the deeds that the younger brother's generations did. And that was the beginning of the Griot. Now, as time went on, people spread all over the world, and with them went a Griot who was responsible for telling all the things that were going on. They told about who was the chief, who became king, who got married, who gave birth, who the bravest and the strongest hunters were, and what happened when a tribe moved from village to village. They were responsible for keeping up with everything, and they passed it down by word of mouth. And that was preserving history and tradition. But not only did the storyteller tell about the good things that were happening, they told about the bad things that were going on too. Which tribes were fighting? Who died? Which tribes were fighting? Who died? They talked about who became king. They talked about droughts in the land, animals that were migrating in and out, all of these things that these storytellers told. And they even told about the coming of the white man. And when the white man came, he brought with him reading and writing and the ability to document and keep history. These were the missionaries that traveled from the European countries. So now we have the missionaries keeping the records and keeping the documents. So storytelling began to take on just a little bit of a different flavor. Instead of keeping history, they now began to tell stories that taught lessons, stories that passed on traditions. As stories went on, as we do from mouth to mouth, things get added, things get forgotten. So the stories begin to kind of take on a different flavor. In order to keep from embarrassing people or to call names or to name tribes, the storytellers sort of substituted animals for the people. So now you have a lot of African stories that are centered around animals. If it was a lion, it was a reflection of a person who was brave and had courage. If it was an elephant, it was a reflection of a person who was strong and big. Hyenas were people who were kind of sneaky and didn't want to do any work and slick. And then you had the little busy bees like the field mice and all. They were people who were workers. And you just had all kind of animals taking on the traits of the humans. And then the stories begin to spread and spread. And when the Africans came to America, they brought these stories with them. It was their way of remembering their African heritage. And it was their way of entertaining themselves. And as they began to tell stories, their stories sort of took on a flavor of picking at the masters and the overseers and the white men. So now they had their own stories from here in America that they would tell, and they used people like Brother Rabbit along the eastern coast. They used stories about him where Brother Rabbit would get over on the other animals. Well, Brother Rabbit was the slave or the black man that they saw themselves as getting over on their white master and doing things and getting away from their white master. And the white master was usually a bear or a fox that they were able to trick. And if you're familiar with the Br'er Rabbit stories, you know Br'er Rabbit was always tricking somebody and getting away with something. Well, back over in Africa, the stories begin to go to Asia, and they had storytellers. As those countries begin to take on the oral tradition of passing things along. So now I would like to present to you just a couple of my favorite stories that were deeply rooted in African tradition. The first story